time. I pray that be beneficial to us all. In your name, amen. So today's like the diet day. So the next 3 weeks, including this week, will be the most applicable. We've sort of like set a bunch of background up in the past. I've like given you bits and pieces, sort of, but today's diet, next week is exercise and programming, and then the following week is sort of like general lifestyle design stuff. So it's going to kind of, this week and the following 2 weeks will sort of bring together just all the stuff we've been talking about. So it should be very applicational. Feel free to ask questions, because this is also the point at which previously all the stuff that I've talked about has been like sort of universal and general truths. But as you apply it to yourself, some things need to change. Some of us have diet limitations, other things like that. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them as I give sort of general guidance, because there might be some of these generalities might apply differently to you, if that makes sense. So diet. One thing about diet that I want to mention. So counting calories is good, following a meal plan is good, and all that stuff. I recommend most people in general, you eat pretty much the same stuff every day, because you know it works for you, and you're not making decisions about food when you're hungry. Fundamentally, that's just like a good way to not get fat. Because when you're chasing food and you wait till you're hungry and then you walk over to the fridge, you go, I don't know what I'm going to do, or you go to a restaurant and look at the menu without any forethought, generally the human mind is just going to lead you towards overeating. So some degree of like planning or structure beforehand just avoids a lot of that. And then you also know that if I eat this same breakfast and lunch, for example, my weight will do this. It'll stay the same, whatever you know it works for you. So I recommend in general that's what you do. The way that I tend to structure most diets for most people that have a family life is dinner's the most flexible, right? We want to enjoy dinner as a family, that kind of thing. All the other meals are just planned. For example, I eat the same stuff every day except for dinner. There's pretty much no variety. I mean, there's like a few different lunches I have, but that's it. Like, there's not many options. Those change over time because I might get tired of eating a certain lunch or breakfast, but then that changes and I have the same one for 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, however long it lasts. That's how I generally recommend approaching things. And what's nice too is this frees up your headspace to be like productive for real life things instead of, making decisions and wasting your energy on deciding what to eat when it's not like you need to do that. We all have plenty of food. So that's my general recommendation, and then have some flexibility around dinner so that you can enjoy a nice meal with family or something like that. But that should be sensitive toward these macros. The other thing that I want to put out there is it's not necessarily, and part of the reason that eating like that's useful, counting calories, weighing all your food, portioning everything out perfectly is not a sustainable lifestyle choice for many of us forever. If you want to do that, that's great. I do that for most of my meals, but I realize that not everybody can just do that might present challenges. So when if I eat this packet of rice with about this much meat for lunch, for example, weight will maintain or go down or do whatever you want it to do, then you don't have to be weighing all the time, okay? So I generally like to think of, I'll show you the macros and how I calculate them for people in a moment, but I generally like to think of, for most people, it's appropriate to use this as training wheels. And then you know how big those portions look like that are appropriate for you, and you get to a point where you can eyeball things and eat fairly intuitively. But I just want to put that out there, that it's not like you have to weigh your food forever. I do recommend doing it for a time, however, just to use it as training wheels, okay? Protein. So we measure all this stuff in grams per pound of body weight. It's simple math, simple ratios. So for protein, you're going to look at 1 gram per pound. Fats, 0.5 gram per pound. And carbs, what we do, carbs are for manipulating weight up or down, or maintaining. That's the gas pedal. Goes up and down. How much is appropriate to do those goals is actually going to be very situationally dependent on you, your activity levels, etc. So a good starting spot for someone who suspects they're generally metabolically healthy. So what I mean by this is someone who doesn't have a disease state of insulin resistance or something like that. I actually like to work backwards from what your calories probably might be per day for maintenance. And that's going to be 10 times your body weight in pounds. Let's say you have a 200-pound man. That's going to be 2,000 calories. Okay? These are easy to calculate. In this particular individual, they're going to be eating 200 grams of protein. They're going to be eating 100 grams of fats. This will come out to 800 plus 900. So just so that you guys know what the math I'm doing. Protein, calories per gram, 4 calories per gram. Fats, part of why they're so easy to gain weight. I don't know, I did 0.2. That should be 0.1 or 0.5. That's what happens when you talk and write at the same time. Like that. So anyone that wrote 2, don't do that. You're going to be very wrong. Well, you'll be fine, but you'll probably be hungry. So for fats, it's actually 9 calories per gram. So they're over twice as dense. And by the way, generally the stomach feels satiated based on weight. So those grams, they don't count. They count like half as much for how many calories you're getting with fats. There's numerous other reasons to keep fats low, but that's one of them. So anyway, total calories for this person eating 200 grams, it's going to be 800 calories right there. This will be 900. So we are up to, what do we got here? That's 1,700 calories. So we've got 300 calories left, which means this person can only eat another, that's going to be like 80 or so. So we're going to just say 80 grams. That's the maintain. Yeah. Oops, 80. And this is a very general starting place and estimate. Okay? This imaginary person might be 150 to maintain because they're on their feet a lot, or that's just the way they are. People that fidget a lot, if you sit and you're moving your legs and stuff like that, they found that it actually adds like hundreds of calories per day sometimes. Like it's actually very significant that it adds up. People that can't like just sit still or whatever, and they're always moving, adults and stuff, it adds up. Every movement you do adds up. And so like those people actually tend to run leaner just because they can't sit still. It does something. So this is just meant to be a starting point, all right? Does anybody have any questions or want me to calculate for you? 4. It's the same as protein.
So you're saying to lose weight, the carbs need to go down.
The carbs would go down.
The protein where it's at and the fat where it's at.
That's right.
So that's for a 200-pound man.
That's for a 200-pound man, not you. If anyone wants to tell me what their body weight is, I'll tell you what it should be for you.
Is it the same for men and women?
Yeah, it is. Yep, a lot of people like to think their hormones, blah, 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 blah. It's not true. If you have, this has been well studied, I don't know if I mentioned this before, if you have hypothyroidism and you're a woman and you weigh 250 pounds and you blame it all on that, they've studied this, probably about 7 pounds of it is due to hypothyroidism. Physiologically. I think actually psychologically is where a lot of the weight gain happens because you feel miserable so you eat. But physiologically, that nutrient partitioning that actually happens due to hormonal signaling, it's a very small slice of the pie. It's very, very minimal. Including as you age. It's been overestimated socially how many fewer calories you burn as you age. It's actually very insignificant. It's less than 1% a year that your calories go down. And if your activity levels are equated, then it's basically the same. Go ahead.
You say you wanted to weigh, this 200-pound man wanted to weigh 175. Would he eat the same protein and fats, but lower the carbs, or would it all be the same proportion?
So there can be you can approach it different ways. In general, I would say reduce carbs. However, you can take some fats away too. I wouldn't recommend bringing fats down to zero, at least not for very long at a time, because you will feel miserable after a while. You can bring it pretty low though. And I'll also say that the more body fat you carry, the more you can get away with fat restriction because your body has a lot and it's easy to liberate fats. So say if it's, I assume you're asking this for a friend. So what you could do is, it's not wrong for you to go, well, I do like the energy I get from carbs, to go ahead and deduct some from carbs and some from fats. That's not wrong. I do recommend keeping the protein. Now, every pound you lose, you can bring this down. Right? So if you want to go down to 190 when you're 190, I wouldn't do it every pound because we're not that accurate in our eating anyway. I mean, it's just that's the way it is. So that's what I recommend you do is, you'd probably start by bringing carbs down to like 40. Just cut them in half or so. That's usually like a good ballpark figure. And then fats, if you wanted to bring this to like 0.4 or 0.3, that's okay. I wouldn't go below like 0.25. You're just going to probably feel your energy levels go down after a while. You do need some to feel well. Wyland?
So fat makes you happy.
Moderate fats do. I would actually argue that carbs make you even happier. But that's right, they do. Yeah, so does that kind of make sense to everybody? Now, this general guidance here, this is not true if you're in a metabolic disease state, if you're not sleeping enough, all those things. Your ability to handle energy intake efficiently goes down, will tend towards fat storage to some degree. So just keep that in mind of how true this may or may not be for you, because it might not be. Vegetables. I'm not going to say a whole lot on this. Every vegetable should be eaten. Vegetables are good for you, eat them. 2 servings per day. They don't have to be huge servings. I just recommend 2 servings per day should cover you. That could be 2 small salads. That could be a salad. What I do is a salad with lunch, a small bowl of salad, and there's greens on the side of whatever dinner I have Emily makes. So pretty much every meal there will be some sort of green. Sometimes it is another salad with dinner, but usually it's greens that have been cooked on a pan or some veggie, or it's integrated into the meal. Keep in mind that vegetables do have carbs in them. It's not usually very many, but it's some. It's not zero. It's greater than 0, but not that many. So it's not like you can fill up on vegetables as filler to if you're dieting to try to make yourself feel full. It's actually a very valid and useful approach. Just realize that like even bean sprouts, they actually have quite a few carbs in them. So if you get a big pile, I've heard of people they load up their sandwiches and other things with bean sprouts on stuff. It's free, right? Because it's mostly water. It is mostly water and carbs. So they're not bad for you, but just factor that in.
It's like on your salad, do you do oil and vinegar dressing?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I recommend. I recommend you never use a dressing you buy at the store because it's full of just junk oils. It's got canola and soy in it, pretty much all of them. And it's bad for you. It causes inflammation. It's hard to digest. So yeah, we use oil, vinegar, and mustard based. Yeah, but there's plenty of homemade ones. Yeah, they don't taste quite as fun. Adding some seasoning though, even just adding salt and pepper to oil and vinegar, maybe some lemon juice, something like that, can be pretty darn good. There's a reason why those other ones taste so good. It's because they get all that junk in them, but that junk is harming you. So I recommend that. And the calories, they're so calorie dense. Ranch is super calorie dense. And I use ranch for dipping. If I'm having pizza, I dip my pizza in ranch because I'm going for it that night. But I don't recommend habitual consumption of ranch every day with your salad. You could be heading into counterproductive territory there, potentially, with that kind of consumption. Yeah.
What would you recommend for, thinking if I was trying to have 160, 170 grams of protein a day?
Yeah, how does that look?
What would you recommend?
Yeah.
Protein-rich foods.
Yeah. So, Well, that goes to our next part, diet design. So practical considerations. Because if you want to get 160 grams of protein, it's pretty tough to eat that in like 2 sittings. I get it. Usually you want to split that out between 4 to 5 meals. You can do it in 3 if you want, but that's a big protein feeding. So usually the practical way that looks is 3 main meals, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a light snack in between. And what I recommend you do is you have fairly lean protein sources throughout the day, and then dinner is where you actually get 50% of your fat consumption. And you just spread out the rest of the fat consumption throughout the day. So during the daytime, you're having, turkey and chicken and pork tenderloin. A lot of people don't know this. So most pork is fatty. Pork tenderloin is like on the level of chicken. And it tastes amazing. And it's easy to make it taste amazing. You can cook it just in the oven with like some spices or, dry rub, just in the oven, and it'll come out perfect. And it's as lean as chicken. Also, really lean ground beef. You don't have to get the 80-20. If you get the, like 92, 95 or whatever, that's pretty much as lean as chicken. So if you want to have a burger with lunch, cool. Like that's totally fine. I wouldn't necessarily put cheese on it. But if you have the fats to afford to do it, then cool. So what that's practically going to look like is, let's say you get up in the morning, you have a pile of Greek. Oh, you're avoiding dairy though, right? Yeah, ish. I have a pile of Greek yogurt. What you might have are eggs. A good way to cut that, if you don't have the fats to spare, is to have like 1 whole egg and then a bunch of egg white. Just 1 whole egg in egg white will drastically change the flavor compared to all egg whites. Big time. Because if you have just egg whites, it's like eating nothing. It's easy. I mean, it's easy to eat in a sense, but it tastes like nothing. So if you just put 1 whole egg in there, that's a great way to start. A few hours later, maybe have a protein shake of some kind, whether that's whey, but if you're trying to avoid dairy, you could go with pea protein or something. Pea protein is not as good of a protein source, but it does work. Or you could have jerky. Jerky is actually often a really lean protein source, especially the steak jerky from Costco. It works pretty well. Or lunch meats. You can have a pile of lunch meat with some veggies or fruit. And in the morning too, you could have maybe oatmeal or something along those lines. Just an easy, simple carb, or a piece of toast with jelly, something like that. Lunch. I usually like lunches to be some combination of a salad on the side. This is just a default for me, and white rice or white potato, and some lean meat. This could be a Asian style meal that's got sauce in it and stuff like that. Usually each of these, and by the way, each of these meat, if you're eating lean meats, you're usually looking at like 4 to 6 ounces of meat per meal. So probably double what you're used to having, but you get used to it. And then pretty much for the afternoon snack, it's going to be similar to the morning. You can have probably another protein shake or lean yogurt if you can handle it, like a Greek yogurt, something like that, and a piece of fruit. It could be the opportunity for you to get your fruit in. And then dinner. Dinner is where you have your red meat, your meat and potatoes type of meal. It can be more fatty, that kind of thing. Does that kind of help? Yeah. And you want to keep those the snacks between meals for compliance purposes. If you have to do any real preparation, they're not going to happen. So like a piece of fruit and a protein shake, or a piece of fruit and Greek yogurt or something like that is generally going to be the way you're going to want to go. Because if you have to like warm it up and prepare it, who's got time to do that 5 times a day? So, yeah. So that's the practical considerations part. Habit building. When I bring up, like I did before, oftentimes of eat the same things every day, a lot of people are like, that's boring. Okay, well, what did you ever get from variety during the day in your meals? Anything? Like, it's okay. Just food isn't supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be exciting once in a while on holidays and at family gatherings. Breakfast should probably just be banal. Doesn't need to be exciting. That's okay. It's okay for breakfast and lunch to just be whatever. Why? Because it's just fuel. Do you get excited about putting gas in your car? No, especially now that it's like $5 a gallon, okay? Just think of it the same way with your body, right? If you're just eating to get through the day, this is just fuel. When it's time to sit down with your family at night, when it's time to have family gatherings and have friends over to your house, then it's time to then the meal rightly becomes recreational. But if you feast every time, it becomes meaningless. And so you can't have that, like, don't try to make meal a celebration every time. Just let it be boring. It should taste good, don't get me wrong. Like, all these meals that I eat, Emily makes them. She has all these meals that I have, they all taste good. But it's the same stuff every day. And this does leave headspace for you to exercise discipline in other areas. You only have so much discipline and decision-making power every day. We're just limited. If you're not exercising that around food, then it frees you up to do other things. But we shouldn't be fighting the same battle about food every day. And one way to just avoid the fight is not make those decisions. I've made them beforehand, and the food's ready to go, and you're just going to eat. Food intolerant.
What do you suggest for somebody that doesn't like to eat breakfast?
Whatever you can handle.
Should you eat something though?
You should. Yes, you should. I'll get into that later, but there actually are health concerns with skipping meals. So whatever you can eat. If you can only handle a piece of fruit, that is better than nothing.
Okay.
If you're just like, I can't have protein, in a perfect world you would, but a piece of fruit would be better than nothing. That's what I would say. But I get it. Like, I have a lot of people that I work with that have a hard time. They're just not hungry in the morning. Yeah. I can pretty much guarantee you, at least all the people I've worked with, once people start being more active and working out and stuff like that, the appetite starts kicking in. So usually a lack of appetite in the morning is tied to lower activity levels. So as your activity levels go up, hunger will tend to also go up with it. Intolerances. So take this with a grain of salt. There's all these food sensitivity tests that you can get online. There's a lot of debate about how useful they really are. They are not useful for discovering a problem you don't know exists. Does that make sense? They're not a useful diagnostic when you don't suspect there's a problem. So if you don't notice, I feel bad after eating certain meals and I can't narrow it down, if you're not experiencing that, don't take them. Because when you do take them, it's going to tell you you're intolerant to a bunch of foods that you're actually perfectly tolerant toward. Intolerance is based on symptoms, not the protein reactivity in your blood after eating certain kinds of meals. However, if you are experiencing problems associated with certain meals like dinner and things like that, or breakfast, and you're having a very difficult time narrowing down, why do I feel bad after 2 hours after eating this meal? Why does my stomach get upset? Whatever. You could try to take one of those tests to help you narrow down. You are not, I guarantee, you are not actually intolerant of everything they say. It's a lot of false positives. So just, if you get the results back, that'll give you a list of things to try to explore. But just because it says you're reactive to shrimp or whatever, you might be. All it means is you might be. It doesn't mean that you are for sure. And also, your reactivity to all these foods changes. It's transient. You might be very reactive to a certain kind of food for a while, and then eventually it goes away. I was nearly completely intolerant of eggs for a couple years. I've, in the last year, been able to eat eggs again. Not daily, I can't handle them daily, but if I had like one egg in a breakfast, I would feel horrible for hours, just absolutely awful. And now I feel fine if I have a couple once in a while. It doesn't make a difference. And that's because I backed off, and then I slowly reintroduced them back in, and you can often do that carefully. But if you keep pushing that same button that aggravates something, it's just going to get worse. And so they can be useful to help you narrow something down. Don't read one and just go, oh, well, clearly I could never have this again and all these 10 things. No, if there's 10 things you're reactive, you're probably intolerant to 1 or 2 of them. If that, honestly. So don't just do it for the fun of it. I think, what's the one that we used? Everly Well. Yeah, that's the one that I've used in the past. It's a finger prick, and you put some blood on a piece of paper, and they test a bunch of stuff for you. That one seemed to work pretty well. It helped me narrow down a couple things that I suspected. But a lot of the stuff that I was reactive to in there that said I was, don't cause any issue for me whatsoever. So just don't let it gaslight you. Cheat meals. People ask about cheat meals all the time. When can I have cheat meals? No, you can. Yeah, it's fine to have cheat meals when you've earned them, right? So it's okay. What I usually say is 2 meals a week. If you're not going crazy, should be fine. If Friday night you want to eat whatever you want, but you've been eating well the rest of the week, sure. But the cheat meal should be whatever you want as far as what you eat, but not how much of it that you eat. So if you're one of those guys that's capable of crushing a pizza in a sitting, you can crush a quarter of a pizza in a sitting. Are you trying to lose weight right now? Have a few pieces and then stop and see how you feel. Probably about 10 minutes later, you'll be like, I'm good. But that rush of wanting to eat, when you start eating and the momentum picks up, just step away from it for a moment and then see how you feel. Often you'll be like, I'm good. Just totally fine. A lot of this comes down to fear of missing out, which is just so goofy because we live in an era, in a place where there's so much food that's attractive to us, and we eat all these meals like they're going to be our last meal and then we're never going to see food again. We do. It's we see a donut and we're like, I'm never going to see a donut again. Every corner has a donut on it, for $1. Nobody's blowing their budget on donuts. So it's okay. I promise you'll see a donut again someday. It's okay to eat half a donut. Well, usually serving sizes are just too much. It's okay when you sit down and eat a pizza to have 1 or 2 pieces. You're not going to be less of a man. It'll keep you from being more of a man in a way you don't want. So I recommend just watching those sizes. If I am not in a, cheat meal status and I'm out and there's pizza and I didn't plan ahead or bring any food, I'll have 1 or 2 pieces. And I'm eating, even right now, I'm eating 4,500 to 5,000 calories a day. But I'll still limit myself to 2, maybe 3 pieces of pizza and just stop. Because that's what I need. I get to enjoy it. It was tasty. But do I need to be stuffed to truly enjoy it? No. It was still a nice experience. And so part of this is we teach our kids to do this, right? When they're upset and getting worked up, you're just step away, go to your room for a little while, then come back, walk away from the situation that you're upset at with your friends, that kind of thing. You might try doing the same thing with food. That feeding frenzy kicks in. It's okay to just stop. All right, I need to give myself a few minutes before I reload my plate. And oftentimes the satiation sets in while you're sitting there waiting to see what happens, and you're I'm okay. This is all right. One thing that helps too, if you're going someplace, you can be the weird guy that brings a protein shake to a gathering of some kind where the food's just not going to be necessarily optimal for your macros, or you're going to feel tempted. Protein shakes are a good way to get your protein. They also just are filling. It's hard to be a pig when you I'll drink the protein shake first, and then I'll start eating the food. Protein shakes kind of sit kind of heavy. They're fairly filling for a short amount of time, and they'll make it so that you got your numbers and you're avoiding overeating on some things that maybe you shouldn't. Practical examples. We actually talked through some practical examples already. One thing that I want to mention about those of you that are homemakers or stay-at-home moms of any kind, the biggest issue that I see women struggling with that are doing this is snacking during the day, because a lot of your work happens in the kitchen. So between sampling the food that you're making and just being around food of, if you taking an ingredient and putting it in something, you have a little bit yourself. You take an ingredient and put it in the food and, in the pot or whatever it is you're making. That can really, really add up fast. Those little bites over and over again can really become a problem. It's okay to put some in your mouth and spit it back out. Nobody's going to see. Because you should taste test your food once in a while. I get that. But it does add up to have, throughout the day, if you have several bites of food, that's a snack. How many calories is that? A couple hundred maybe? I don't know. So now you're 10% over or more. Happens really fast. So I recommend watching that. If you are struggling, spit the food back out in the trash if you have to or something like that. Or you're going to have to just watch your portions later. But it does add up a lot. I've had women that I've worked with that no, it's just a couple bites here and there. It's not much, and I can't get them to lose weight. And because they find out they're snacking, the more that we dial down their calories, the more they snack in between, and thinking that it's nothing because it's still nothing. It's still nothing. And then one time I had one I need you to weigh everything before you put it in your mouth for a day, and they were just blowing it out of the water as far as their calories went. It adds up shockingly fast because it's just spread out throughout the day. So it is easy to overeat when you're in a kitchen around food a lot. So just be mindful of that. Go ahead.
So the weight of the food is significant. So if you ate Rice Krispies as a snack, it weighs virtually nothing. That would be better.
Not necessarily. What Rice Krispies are just dry, so they're light for what they are. So like a carrot would be less calorie dense for the weight, just as an example. I was just trying to get a general sense of what she was doing. Yeah. Another way is take a picture with your phone of everything, every calorie you put in your mouth for the day. You might be very ashamed of yourself. You don't have to send it to anybody. Just take those pictures at the end of the day, look at it, scroll through. Oh man, I did eat that. Typical day in the life. Oh great. These things can be revelatory. So I do recommend taking that approach. Anybody have any further questions on those practical applications before we move on? Yeah.
Do you have a protein shake brand that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's two. So for powdered protein, I get powdered protein from myprotein.com. Their salted caramel is my favorite. I've tried a lot of their flavors, but the salted caramel is my favorite. And then for ready-to-go protein shakes, Premier Protein. Yeah, Premier Protein is a go-to, and the Fairlife chocolate is basically like chocolate milk, but it has 2 grams of carbs in it. So it's really good. It's stupid good. And you can find all of these, the Fairlife and the Premier Protein, they're in stores all over the place. Fairlife, yeah. Fairlife they also have a chocolate milk. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Fairlife chocolate flavored protein drink. So you'd have to watch which one you're getting. They both taste amazing, but the macros are quite different. Yeah.
Are you going to talk about the physical day job and day shift ones?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So, with the physical day job, so the guys that are moving around on your feet, you're going to just be hungry more than the guys that are sitting around, right? A few heads shaking. Yeah, I'm very hungry. Yeah, I get it. The many meals per day is going to be really helpful. Really helpful. Those little snacks are kind of key because it's almost impossible to just eat at lunch without just going overboard, and then on the drive home, not stopping somewhere and getting something you shouldn't. One big thing I have guys do often that I work with that have active jobs to keep them from eating on the drive home, something bad, just always make sure you have a piece of fruit or something like that to eat on the drive home. If you just do that, it's just going to be a lot harder for you to do something you shouldn't do. And the other thing is like, what are you keeping in your car? I've seen people like keep, like boxes of like chip bags in their cars and stuff like that. Just don't do that because it's like, it's like an alcoholic, like just hanging out at the liquor store. I'm just here. Should be fine. It's like you're asking for trouble. So just, when you pack your lunch and everything, make sure I have a little Ziploc of grapes or whatever, and your plan is to eat all those grapes and drink some water on the drive home. Something along those lines can just kind of help you. And a handful of grapes is going to cost you 40 calories or something. It's not going to be much. But the spread out meals is a pretty big assist there. You can use things like your snacks. Obviously, you want the protein, so it's going to usually look like a protein shake of some kind. But yogurt is good too, along with either fruit or like a granola bar, like the Nature Valley granola bars, things like that can be very effective. Otherwise, you're just going to find yourself starving at lunch and you're going to overeat. And then you get home for dinner and you're just like ravenous, and in that, desperation, you're more tempted to just go crazy on something you shouldn't. The late shift one even makes it worse, which I think you work funky hours, CJ works funky hours. It can be particularly hard because you find yourself not hungry at times that you should be hungry, and then like you get home or whatever at the end of your shift, and all of a sudden all that hunger that you didn't have for some reason earlier starts kicking in. That's when it's time to have it planned what you're going to eat. And I can tell you this too, psychologically. If you have already planned out what you're going to eat, and you know it's going to be at home, it's waiting for you, that is so much easier to comply with than driving home and having the thought, what am I going to eat next?
So you go through the drive-through.
Exactly. Yeah, because you're like, I don't have time. I'm not going to go and make a decision. You're done making decisions for the day. You just worked. So your decision-making power is at an all-time low. Your discipline's at an all-time low. And here you are deciding what to do about probably the most important meal of the day. But if well, when I get home, I have, rice waiting and ground beef, or it's, ready to cook, then if a plan is in place, then all of a sudden all of that just kind of goes away. And that's probably the biggest part of this, is just plan, just a little bit of planning. I can't remember, is it Uncle Ben's that makes the little rice packets? Yeah, Uncle Ben's, they make these, it's an orange packet. You microwave it. It tells you how much water to put in it, and they turn out perfect every time. You do it in the microwave, put it in a bowl, and you'll have rice in 5 minutes. And that's about the time it takes you to pan fry whatever meat you want to have. There you go. It's a cup of rice every time. Wyland?
What if you find yourself eating, you're not hungry at all, but you just want to crunch something. And the sensation of crunching something in your teeth.
Yeah.
Maybe something that's a little bit salty.
Yeah.
Well, is there something you can eat that doesn't have carbs?
Probably the best choice is salted popcorn.
Salted
Popcorn has so little calories in it. As soon as you add oil to it, like butter, that is no longer the case. But if you just make popcorn and salt it, also what's good on popcorn is that you can buy that ranch powder. Yeah, put that ranch powder on it. That's really good. Anything like that. All sorts of seasoning actually is good on popcorn. But if you want something crunchy, salty, probably the lowest calorie option I'd say would be, rice cakes too. Yeah, rice cakes. The ones that aren't all sugary. You can buy ones that are all sugary, not ones that are super sugary.
Like the caramel ones.
Yeah, like the caramel ones. Yeah, they do taste good. I get it. But they're basically, the rice cakes are mostly air. You're hard. Yeah. Well, it is actually, it's actually not an unhealthy thing usually, because it's just rice. It's just rice that's been puffed like popcorn. Like they've basically taken it through a similar process. In this case, it's in a mold to make it that specific shape that it takes on. Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
How much is too much?
Depends on what your allowance is for the day. So a half a pound of burger is usually going to be about 50 grams of protein. But at most restaurants, it's also going to come with, probably on the order of, I'd say, 20 to 30 grams of fats in the meat alone, which is quite a bit. So it's more what you're looking out for. With restaurant burgers, they're usually super duper fatty. That's probably why they taste so good. They're all juicy and everything. That's the appeal. Like, I'm not saying never have one. I'm just saying it depends on what you can afford for the day. So it's not necessarily bad. One thing that does help though is not getting them with cheese.
Yeah, I realized this problem when we went to a Bob's one time, and I was like I had a really bad day and didn't have lunch. It's like, oh, a pound of burger, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And then I felt awful.
How much meat was on that burger I had a couple months ago? Yeah, I had a 16 ounce. Yeah, it was amazing. It was so good. I hadn't eaten almost anything that day though, because we knew where we were going for dinner that night. It was when we were in Ohio a couple months ago for the Arnold Strongman Classic to watch, and there was this well-known burger place, and it was like actual real farm fresh burger. It was a pound of burger, and there was it said like some sliced turkey on the top. Or no, it was ham. It was like this thick. The burger was like probably 7-8 inches around. Like it was this, like I could barely hold it. Like it was like falling apart. Totally destroyed it. And it tasted so good every bite. I didn't gain any weight though. Why? Because I had some breakfast and I had a very light lunch. And breakfast was fairly light too. So like I planned ahead. It was fine. I came away from that not having gained any weight permanently. I was a little bloated that night. But nothing stayed long term. Does that kind of answer? Yeah. Vitamins. I had already kind of covered this, but I just want to go through it again. Those are the main ones you should be looking at taking. I don't think I talked about glycine the other day. Glycine helps you with antioxidant stuff, basically. It's a precursor to, I'll see the one that starts with a G. That's the king of all antioxidants. Glutathione, which naturally occurs in the body. It's a precursor to glutathione. It basically is an antioxidant. It helps with gut health stuff a little bit. It also, you take that in the evening because it can make you drowsy. Fun fact about glycine too, you can buy it in powdered form, like all over the place, and it tastes like sugar. It's actually sometimes used as an artificial sweetener, and you can have grams of it per day. It's no calories. It's the only artificial sweetener I've ever had that doesn't leave a goofy aftertaste. So if you're having like plain yogurt with fruit and you want to like spruce it up, glycine would be the way that I would say you'd probably want to go. It's no calories, should actually help gut health, and I don't know how there's no aftertaste, because everything else, stevia, all those, they just have an aftertaste I do not like. Glycine.
Is there a brand name for that?
You can get it on Amazon, honestly, but bulksupplements.com has bags of it. Yeah. It's not a brand name product, that's just what it is.
It just says glycine.
Yes, it says glycine, Glycine, like it's spelled here, yeah. And it's been studied, humans have had it up to like 6 grams per day, which is quite a lot, because it's very potent. To sweeten it, you don't want much. It's pretty strong.
What does it do to your sugar levels?
Nothing. It's not calories.
Can you cook with it? Can
Yes.
you bake with it?
Yeah, you totally can. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you tried the liquid stevia?
I have.
To me, it doesn't leave it.
Yeah, some people it doesn't give. Yeah. Yeah, some people the liquid doesn't mess with it. To me, it leaves a horrible bitter aftertaste, even the liquid as well.
But this is not considered as sugar.
It's not. No, your body doesn't process it as sugar. It doesn't change your blood glucose levels.
So if you bake with it, it's considered sugar-free then?
Yes, it would be. Absolutely. Yeah, that's true.
So you're not only sweetening your whatever it is.
Yeah, Oxidative stress is an antioxidant is basically anything that's going to clear your body of oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is anything your body does that's all the leftovers from processing oxygen. So we need oxygen, it's really good for us, but there's a whole bunch of pro-inflammatory and other leftovers from processing oxygen that need to be cleared. It helps clear those toxins from the body. That's the very simplistic.
So going back to the food, so Greek yogurt, do you do plain Greek yogurt?
I do, yes. I like to add vanilla to it and honey if I can take the macros, but glycine actually works really well in it too. I've had people do that with like glycine and fruit, and it really adds up. And like I said, and the vanilla. Vanilla really adds a lot to the plain yogurt because it's kind of bitter, but with fruit.
Like the vanilla or the honey. We buy the
Yeah.
vanilla or the honey usually, but
Yeah.
it's better to add our own.
It is. I would recommend doing that over getting the stuff that they sweeten with, corn syrup and stuff like that. All right. Fad diets. Vegetarianism, veganism. Vegetables aren't bad for you. A lot of like the carnivore, keto, the anti-nutrients, all this other junk. Yeah, is there stuff in vegetables that's like bitter and kind of like hard on your gut? Yeah. Just like there's stuff in meat that's kind of hard for your gut to break down, like protein, which is the hardest thing your body breaks down. Okay, it's made to do that. Can we move on, please? There's no evidence to support that, like, if you eat a bunch of vegetables, you're going to have horrible gut health. If anything, it actually is the opposite because the fiber is beneficial. So, if you want to eat tons of vegetables, that's great. Just don't try to get your protein from them because it is an inferior protein source in general. It's a much narrower set of amino acids, basically. Protein isn't just a thing. It's sort of like a category of things. It's all the amino acids that occur in animal products. That's what's good for us. The much narrower set that you can get from certain vegetables, one is it's really, really hard to eat enough, by the way. Like, you've got black beans and soybeans are the most prominent sources of plant protein. You have to eat a lot of, they both have, black beans have more carbs than protein. Soy has a little more protein than carbs. Good luck digesting that. Soybeans digest, like most people, it's just going to wreck you. So do not recommend trying it. If you like your vegetables, just eat a high vegetable meal with meat. Go ahead.
What about different kinds of mushrooms?
Mushrooms are great for you. Big fan. They have a lot of specific minerals and other things like that. Also seems to be some gut health benefits and all that kind of stuff. I like mushrooms. And they tend to be like really low calorie. Really low calorie. So they're kind of a filler that has health benefits.
What do you think of BCAAs as a supplement?
I think they're pretty much useless. Yeah. They can have their place sometimes, but they made more sense when people that were like working out, were taking in whey proteins that lacked those amino acids. But now that we understand amino acids better, those missing chains are now present in pretty much all protein powder products. So they have less utility than they used to. I wouldn't really bother. The only time that I use them anymore is during a refeed from a water cut, which nobody here is doing, and I don't recommend you do because it's horrible if it's a deep water cut. Any other questions? Okay. Carnivore, keto. Fat's not necessarily inherently bad for you, but a high-fat diet does seem to mess with your insulin sensitivity. That's the main issue I have with those. And your digestion is not going to be as good. Not that regularity is necessarily an indicator of digestion health, but it's just hard for you to break down that many fats. That's all it comes down to. It takes a lot of stomach acid and other things like that. We talked about the slow release effect harming insulin sensitivity before. I'll just go through it really quickly. Your insulin receptors are like most other mechanical things. They're made to do work, they're made to bear load, right? They're not supposed to do nothing, they're supposed to do something. However, it's time over curve, right? So if this is the resting threshold for your insulin receptors, like if this is your insulin levels, they're basically doing nothing. When you take multiple feedings per day and you do this, that's fine. In fact, it doesn't even really seem to matter how high that spike goes, by the way, because you have millions of receptors, so whatever. But if you eat a meal where it does this, that's a lot more taxing on the insulin receptors. I don't know if everybody can see this, but that's far more taxing on your insulin receptors because they got brakes here. They didn't get down here, and that's the fundamental problem with high-fat diets. I've seen blood work of people on high-fat diets, and I've talked to clinics, like hormone clinics, that they look at thousands of panels of blood work. I've seen the same thing they have. Pretty much everybody that follows a ketogenic or carnivore diet has very low hormone values, and they tend to have terrible insulin sensitivity. And those are both things I don't recommend you have. Fasting, you asked about fasting. So I think it was in 2021 or 2020 or so, a meta-analysis came out. And a meta-analysis is basically a study where they look at a big body of data from many other studies. In this case, the cohort was 200,000 people across Japan and the United States. Why Japan? I don't know. Apparently they found some studies. But they look at all the population data they got from these studies that were studying completely different things, right? It's just a way of pulling in data, a large data set. They examined skipping breakfast. What does it do to the life expectancy of these individuals? On average, the lifespan was reduced by 7 years from skipping breakfast alone. Your risk of cardiovascular and metabolic disease tends to go up. So all heart conditions and all diabetic and similar conditions, which also lead to cancer as well. They only examined skipping breakfast. They weren't looking at intermittent fasting, which, by the way, intermittent fasting is just a really stupid term because you do it regularly. You don't do it intermittently. So by definition, it doesn't make sense. That aside, I mean, if you do something predictably, is it intermittent? No, it's cyclical. That aside, it just appears that the human body is suited toward regular feedings throughout the day. So you fast at night. People that are super into that go on and on and on about autophagy. Does anyone know what autophagy is and what it means? You probably have heard people talk about it, though, like it's a super good thing and you need to fast to make it happen. You do need to fast to make it happen. Do you know when you fast every day, no matter what? When you sleep. Yeah, when you sleep, and you get enough autophagy. Otherwise, so autophagy is the killing off of dead cells, or not dead cells, they're actually not dead yet. It's the killing off of living cells that have reached their, should we say, efficient potential. So what happens is, this is another reason why sunlight exposure and UV light exposure is very important, by the way. When you are exposed to red light and UV light, you're actually dependent on this, by the way. This is really important for cancer clearance before it happens. It's not going to cure you of cancer if you have it. I want to be clear on that. When those lights hit the cells in your body, and by the way, they penetrate all the way down to your bones. Well, the infrared light specifically goes all the way to the bone marrow, okay? If it's intense enough, which the sun certainly is. In those cases, what happens is those cells will perform the equivalent of a stress test, a metabolic stress test, to see how efficient they are at handling electrons, which is what everything comes down to, electron balance in the human body. And the short story is, what they do is, if they pass the test, nothing happens. They're just like, cool, we're good. If they do not pass the test, they release what's called a cytokine. And a cytokine is like holding up a flag and saying, please kill me, I'm no longer useful. That's really what it is. And then autophagy is the process of eliminating, replacing that cell. The cells that don't get the chance to raise the flag and say, I'm no good anymore, what do you think happens to them? Eventually, they turn cancerous. You don't need fasting to do this. It happens based on the signaling that happened during the day. This happens most efficiently from sunlight. You don't need more than several hours at night to clear everything that needs to be cleared. You don't need 20 hours to do it. It's fine. Otherwise, everybody would have been dropping dead of cancer all the time because people haven't been intermittent fasting forever. It's a new fad, goofy thing. So I recommend sunlight exposure instead, which is useful for many things. This is one of them. Metabolic disease, cancer, all it is a cell becomes dysregulated metabolically. They just replicate really fast. They get greedy for resources. They pull in resources from the blood around them or whatever else. That's why they get hypervascular, is because cancer growth is just a hypermetabolic organism. It's a thing that takes in tons of resources and just grows really fast. Fundamentally, that's what it's doing. What this is doing is just stopping it before it happens. It's stopping the cells at the root and saying, okay, you need to be killed because you're becoming a problem, because cells don't last for very long. Wyland?
So if I understand this correctly, sunlight actually prevents cancer.
Yes, that's correct.
What about all these warnings about make sure you wear a rash guard?
Yeah.
If you don't, you get sunburn, and if you get sunburn, you get skin cancer, which will turn
Yeah.
into cancer's Achilles.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. If you look at data from the last 20 years, skin cancer is going up in the United States. Actually, really significantly. I didn't realize how much until I looked at it months ago. Really significantly. Like
Going down?
going up.
Oh, going up.
Up. More and more people are getting it. Like way, way, way more. Also, sunblock sales. Do you think that it's up or down? Yeah. More people are using it now than they used to, right? All the parents are putting sunblock on their kids. So what you said was correct, actually. You actually said the right words. Sunburn. When you get a sunburn, yeah, that you created a cancer risk for life, potentially, when you get a sunburn. But if you expose yourself to sun and don't get burned, then it's cancer preventative. And this is why part of why I recommended months ago, or a couple months ago, maybe early on, don't wear sunglasses. The adaptation to the sun that you get when you get tan, when the melanin increases in your skin, is protective. It's blunted when you wear glasses, any glasses that block UV light. Without that UV signaling, you become less capable of adapting to sunlight. So then you have to limit sunlight exposure because you're more likely to get burned. It's true.
Glasses decrease the likelihood of sunburn.
Yes, that's correct. Now, wear your sunblock. If you're pasty white and you're going to be out somewhere, you should avoid burns. But the point is to try to be adapted to it more or less at all times, as much as you can. And actually, if you buy a UV light, you'll actually maintain, and if you're under it for an hour or so every day, sitting at a desk or wherever you are, you'll actually maintain some degree of color. So I do recommend it, even for that purpose, so that you're less likely to get burned once springtime starts hitting and the sun's out and you have that first day you go out and you get burned or whatever. You're less likely to get burned. So yeah, you should avoid sunburns, but the way you avoid sunburns is not wearing sunglasses all the time and exposing yourself in the proper amounts. Yeah. So it sounds
So with
weird,
my
but
skin tone and the way that I burn, and me skipping breakfast, I'm toast.
I mean, these are all just risk factors, right? So I'm just saying what they are. So someone that just tends toward being really light-colored skin, really pale, and has a hard time, you should expose yourself to the sun, but it's going to have to be in small doses.
Very
Once
small,
the
'cause I can burn in 5 minutes. I swear I can burn in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you have to be careful of that. And when you're out, you want to make sure that you don't wear sunglasses. Another factor too: expose yourself to the sun in the morning, not in the afternoon. When you, There's actually two factors. That's one of them. That's actually 50% of it. The other 50% is the spectrum of sunlight that hits you is different. So in the morning, it's very infrared and a little bit of UV. In the middle of the day, it's very UV and less infrared. The infrared, so a sunburn is like a very physical burn. It's the heat, it's the temperature of your skin got too much, okay? What mitigates this is cooling it, right? If you guys remember what I said infrared light does to the skin? Why it gets red without burning? Anybody remember? It's blood flow. That increased blood flow. That doesn't happen on UV dominant spectrums. That does happen on infrared dominant spectrums. You get increased blood flow to the skin surface. That's why you get that reddening of the skin, but it's not burned yet. You know what I'm talking about? That's what that is. It's actually the creation of nitric oxide right under the skin. And all the blood vessels are opening up and there's increased flow to prevent a burn. So that's your body actually preparing for more sunlight exposure. So you're giving yourself the best chance. So if you do want to get more adapted to sunlight, typically you want morning exposure because it is a little less intense too, like you said, but it's also going to have less UV. UV is what burns you. You do need UV to thrive, but you need the right dose. And so you can adapt yourself by morning exposure. Some of you might have noticed this in the past. If you're somewhere where there's sunlight, you burned really fast in an afternoon, like shockingly fast, but you might have had other times where you don't get it because you were exposed in the morning to the sun for a while and you didn't really burn, even if it was for a much longer duration. That's why. There's just less UV, there's more infrared, so there's more mitigating factors to keeping you from burning. And in fact, if you get exposed to sunlight in the morning and you're like I'm moderately tanned right now, I can probably handle being outside most of a day at this point because if I start in the morning. But if I just go outside in an afternoon, I might burn in an hour. But if I start in the morning and I get that increased blood flow and all those mitigating factors, and also you start tanning immediately. Like that process starts happening while you're under sunlight. So like you get darker throughout the day, you start in the morning. The humans are made to not be artificially shielded, etc. And so you're sort of doing this in the right manner if you want to make that happen.
So you told us about sunlight in the morning and midday.
Mm-hmm.
What about afternoon and evening?
It's the same as morning, just opposite. So it's the same thing. If you can only expose yourself to the sun in the afternoon, late afternoon and evening, it's basically the same thing as in the morning. It's a high infrared environment, low UV.
And the redness of the skin,
Mm-hmm.
by blood vessels, and that's guarding against sunburn?
That's correct. Because it has a cooling effect.
It has to do with temperature. Sunburn it's actual temperature.
So that does happen under certain temperatures too. It actually happens cold temperatures. So when you get like a red nose when it's cold, or your ears get red or your fingers get red.
But what about sunburn in particular?
Sunburn in particular, that is happening as a result of the heat plus the infrared signaling.
The heat plus the
Correct.
So if you're out and it was windy,
Mm-hmm.
you're cold, but you're in bright midday sun,
Mm-hmm.
what would be the likelihood of getting sunburned compared to no wind at all?
You would probably be a little less likely to be burned. Yeah, it would reduce your risk factor because the wind is cooling. That'd be the main factor I'd look at there.
What about people say that they go to Hawaii and they're snorkeling and they
Mm-hmm.
don't have a rash guard on? They're, usually underneath the water they stay pretty cold, but they still get sunburned.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not the temperature factor so much.
Because UV alone also it can give you, yeah. But the heat is really that's what can make you burn fast. The heat of the sun physically heating up your skin. But UV light alone, even if you don't become hot, if the surface area doesn't get hot, can burn you as well.
So would wearing a rash guard be a better idea than sunblock?
It depends. It depends. So sunblock, you have to reapply for it to be effective, especially if you go in and out of water, then it washes off. A rash guard, is going to, as long as you wear it, provide the same level of protection that's unchanging. So you'll have to weigh what's workable for you.
In your sunblock, what actually is it in there that prevents the sun from damaging?
A bunch of things that cause cancer. I recommend if you get sunblock, you get a zinc-based sunblock. Yeah, which there's a lot of them now, but a lot of people have become aware of this because there's a ton of chemicals in conventional sunblocks that are actually really bad for you. And you put it on your skin and you just absorb it. Our skin is very porous. So get a zinc-based sunblock. They are not as powerful. So realize the limitations, be cautious. I recommend you don't get burned. I recommend you expose yourself to the sun as much as possible without getting burned. The more you do so, the more adapted you become, the more tan you become, the less burned you'll become.
I get the impression that a lot of the health damage that occurs in a modern lifestyle comes from modern technology.
That's correct. Yeah, modern technology, the seeking of comfort, lack of outdoor exposure, lack of activity levels, increased exposure to EMF. Yeah.
So
Modernity is killing us.
I read a study once. There was this African tribe. They were way out in the bush, and for eons, all they did was follow this herd of wild cows.
Mm-hmm.
They would eat these cows.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much their diet. And then somebody got the idea, we'll take them and we'll put them in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And their health just went down the drain.
Yeah, I believe it.
By the way, because they were eating a modern Western diet.
I believe it.
Their cows anymore.
Yeah.
Because out in the bush, they didn't have any modern technology.
Animals that are in captivity in zoos, they develop all the same disease states that Americans do. They become diabetic, they become infertile, they gain weight, they become depressed. All the same disease states. Why? Because now they have access to a bunch of shade, they're under artificial lights at night, so their circadian rhythm gets messed up, they don't get to roam large spaces and be as active.
They never look happy.
No, they don't. It's because they're not. They're miserable and they're in a diseased state. Now the ones that are in, like you might have heard, like the larger like safari type of preserves where they have animals. There's one I went to in San Diego once. Those animals are all fine because they've got thousands of acres to roam, and so it's like a natural environment for them. But a captive animal, they're all developing the same disease states we see in Americans. We thought like, oh, humans get diabetic. Yeah, apparently like tigers do too.
They have cancer a lot,
They do. Yeah.
a lot. I worked at the vet clinic.
Yeah, they have the captive animals. They're very unhealthy, very unhealthy, and they have a hard time breeding them because they get infertile because of these disease states, and they're doing all the same things we're doing to ourselves. Wyland, one more question, and we got to close it out.
Diabetic state. Could you describe that? What is diabetic?
Yeah, there's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is the one that you generally will develop as a result of lifestyle choices. So type 2 is just insulin resistance. Your insulin receptors don't work effectively any longer. They see the insulin signaling in your blood, they bind, but it does borderline nothing if in extreme cases. So what happens is the blood glucose and insulin levels in your blood will rise. And the blood glucose level rising in your blood is a big problem when it's elevated all the time because it's crystals and it physically scores the inside of your blood vessels. That's why people that have it tend to get plaque buildup and clogs and things like that because it's actually like scratching something over and over again. So it becomes just, imagine if you scratch the same part of your skin all the time. You'd get a sore there. Type 1 diabetes is where your body doesn't produce adequate or any insulin any longer. That's where the pancreas actually becomes damaged for whatever reason. It doesn't produce insulin any longer. You can have one or the other or both. Usually type 1 is something that it's often more developed in children, like shortly after birth or something along those lines. It appears to be a disease state wherein, like an autoimmune disease, where the immune system attacks the pancreas and effectively kills the cells that produce insulin. Now, type 2 diabetics can become insulin dependent, but that's because they're so resistant to insulin, they actually take insulin injections on top of the insulin that they make because they're trying to just override the blood glucose in their body. And it's a really horrible sort of race to the bottom at that point. Like once you're, in fact, in one of my other businesses, I also deal in life insurance for people, and you can't get coverage in many cases for an insulin-dependent type 2 diabetic. But a type 2 diabetic who just takes a pill a day to manage it, you can get them insurance. But once you're insulin-dependent, it's kind of like you don't know how long you're going to live. Does that kind of make sense?
So type 2 is you don't produce insulin.
Type 2, you do produce insulin, but you're resistant to it.
Oh, type 2 is you're resistant.
Yeah, type 1 is you don't produce insulin on your own. Yeah. And type 2 can lead to type 1 because you've been trying to make so much insulin, the pancreas can actually get, it seems like just overwhelmed, or you get pancreatitis where it's inflamed, and the body can actually attack it and damage it permanently too.
You get ketoacidosis.
That can also,
I've had it.
yeah.
You don't want to get that.
Yeah, you'll be in the hospital for a bit and you feel absolutely horrible from what I hear. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's dismiss and we can all get going to main service. Father, thank you for bringing us together this morning. Thank you for some time to talk about stewardship of the body. I pray that you be with Dave and the message he brings this morning, and also for the worship team as they lead us. In your name, amen.